Warning, the following video will contain spoilers for the Elden Ring Shadows of the Erdtree DLC. If you don't want to hear about bosses, story bits, and whatnot, you might as well click off this video right now. But hey, don't say I didn't warn you. Hey, how you doing everybody? Jude here. So I just beat the newest DLC from Software's Elden Ring Shadows of the Erdtree. And man oh man, do I have some thoughts on this DLC. For those of you who don't know, I am a massive Soulsborne fan who's played just about every game that FromSoft has made within this subgenre. From Demon Souls to Dark Souls to Bloodborne to Armored Core. Okay, maybe not the last one, but you get what I mean. So Elden Ring released back in 2022, and it was kind of expected that From Software would give us some DLC in the future, like they always do. And 2 years later, they would do just that with Shadows of the Erdtree. For those of you who don't know, Elden Ring has you venturing off into the lands between to explore the world and ascend the throne of Elden Lord. And the DLC takes you to a brand new area called the Land of Shadows, which features a whole slew of new characters, enemies, weapons, and a whole lot of bosses that'll make you throw the controller across the room. And to get to the DLC, you have to make it to the Mogwin Palace and defeat the boss of said area, Mohg, Lord of Blood. So right off the bat, the game expects you to have made it to a pretty high level going into this DLC, which is the case with all FromSoft's DLC in the past anyway, so cool. And to those of you who are worried that the DLC would be too easy, oh ye of little faith. It is highly recommended that you at least be near the end game before tackling this DLC, because the Shadow Realm shows no mercy. This is, without doubt, the hardest DLC FromSoft has ever put out. Tougher than the likes of Bloodborne: The Old Hunters or Dark Souls 3: The Ring City. The Realm of Shadow is massive, with tons of areas to explore and giant colossi who want nothing more than to burn you to the ground. But regardless, you'll need to find these things called Erdtree fragments to level up your character's stats even further, as well as revered spirit ashes, which boost your spirit ashes in combat. Why yes, dear viewer, I do use spirit ashes, get over it.
You what?
And you're tasked with venturing off into the Realm of Shadow to find the kindly Miquella and kindly get medieval on his four-armed hiney. But enough of that stuff, let's get the obvious question out of the way first. Is Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree worth $40? Yes it is. If you're someone who played the heck out of the base game of Elden Ring, it is even more of what you love from the main campaign. And you have a ton of new areas to explore to your heart's content, such as the Castle of Ensis, the Skadu Atlas, the Cerulean Coast, and the Shadow Keep. And you're going to want to do a lot of looking around because some of these places are hard to get to. Or, you know, you could just look up a guy like I did. A lot of people were worried about the $40 price tag being too expensive for the DLC. But trust me, there's a lot of content awaiting you in the Shadow Realm. There are several new Everjail bosses, dungeons to explore and ultimately die in, and over 10 new major bosses to take on within the DLC. In fact, this thing ain't no DLC, brother. It's practically an expansion with how much new stuff there is in here. There's a ton of new spells, incantations, and weapons to pick up and learn in the world. For my playthrough, I went with the strength/faith build until I inevitably went back to dual-wielding twin blades and spamming the jump attack for proc blood loss plus frostbite. But regardless, I stuck with melee weapons for the most part. But I can't say anything about the new spells that were added since I may be stupid and can never bother with intelligence builds. One of the first new weapons I enjoyed was the Black Steel Great Hammer, found very early in the game, and giving it the Lion's Claw Ash of War made this thing break poise faster than you can say self-subverting. But I did dabble in a few of the new incantations. Here's the best part, they suck. These things took forever to cast, had insane stat requirements for how worthless they ultimately were, so I just inevitably stuck with Old Reliable with Golden Vow plus Flame Grant Me Strength. The one exception that I did enjoy was the Knight's Lightning Sphere, which was like the regular Lightning Sphere, but now on crack. This thing threw out a ton of damage to foes in my run. It has great range, and most enemies don't even bother dodging it. Though it did require a total of 36 faith to use, trust me, this thing is awesome. And I dread the thought of FromSoft nerfing this thing in a later patch. Another weapon I absolutely loved was Devonia's Hammer. As someone whose go-to weapons are axes and hammers, it made me very pleased to see FromSoft give us such strong feeling hammers like this one. It was insane when combined with the Giza Wheel that I was doing nearly 3k damage to bosses. Holy moly. Sure, the Ash of War I barely used, even though it has hyper armor and whatnot, but that damage made me enjoy getting me mallet. Also, if someone could please mod this hammer into Monster Hunter World, I would pay good money for that. When I explored the Fogwrath Catacombs and found the Death Knight twin axes, I was already a fan of these babies. These axes deal lightning damage, and when dual wielded, let me Beyblade my foes to death, thanks to their amazing Ash of War Blink Bolt twin axe. Well, too bad this skill has no hyper armor because I was dashing all over these bosses and I loved it. They weren't the best weapons overall, but man were they fun to use. But my favorite new weapon overall has to be the new Dryleaf Arts, which does some of the sickest looking combos in the whole game. They may not look all that impressive in terms of design, but these punches and kicks feel so good to pull off. And once I got the Dryleaf Whirlwind and added blood loss to them, every enemy in the world fell before me. Good job, FromSoft. You finally made fifth weapons that are actually good. One last weapon I would like to mention is the Barbed Staff Sphere, which has one of the best Ashes of War in the game, since it shoots off a flurry of golden arcs at a foe. Not only that, but it also causes blood loss to build up, somehow, allowing you to hit foes from a safe distance. And I use this thing to beat Bale, so you know it's pretty good. But the next question I'm sure everyone is dying to know right now is Shadow of the Erdtree DLC too hard?
Well, yes, but actually no.
While these games are known for having punishing but rewarding gameplay, the DLCs are always going to be the hardest content available to the player. But Lord have mercy on you, because some of these fights are freaking ridiculous. The camera does its best to keep track of what the heck is going on here, but it will inevitably fail, causing you to lose track of where a character is, and then get a sound thrashing to the face. Sure, there may be some current OP builds that will wreck the daylights out of these bosses, but those builds will no doubt get nerfed in the future patches of the game, so enjoy them while you can. The amount of nonsense that these bosses can throw at you is astonishing to say the least. The base game had bosses that could 2 to 3 tap you, but now there's a bunch of foes that can just 1 tap you if you're unaware. Especially when the first major boss of the DLC starts throwing out insta-kill command grabs. On top of that, some of these attacks will inevitably tank the frame rate, especially ones with big effect AoEs, and I'm running this on a 4070 by the way. And it doesn't matter if you dodge everything at the right time, because you're gonna get clipped and hit no matter how hard you try. Not to mention, there's a lot of bosses that will do up to 6 hits or more before you get your turn to do a measly 1 attack. Thanks, game. And while I did my best to fight these bosses without other players at first, eventually the final boss made me realize that this stuff is too much for me. I'm bringing in some help. But critiquing aside, these remembrance bosses are a spectacle to behold, and make for some of the best encounters within the whole game. Out of the 11 main bosses in the game, my personal favorite was Mesmer, who ended up being the most fair of the fights in the DLC, since you have time to summon your Spirit Ash or NPCs to help out with the snake dude. And while he has a lot of wide sweeping fire attacks, the timing on them is rewarding to learn the pattern of to get those hits in, as well as one of the coolest second phases where he summons giant snakes to take a big old bite out of you like he's a dude from Bloodborne. I mean, he's on the box art of the game for a good reason, people. Another boss I want to get mentioned to is the Cursed Bale. This one-legged dragon is the DLC equivalent of Dark Eater Midir from DS3, in that he is a dragon boss in the DLC that is completely optional and not required to beat the main DLC story at all. In fact, there's only like 3 DLC bosses that are mandatory. He may only have 1 good spot to hit, that being his head, but man, this is one of the best dragon fights in the entire series, featuring punishing but fair attacks that are easy to learn but hard to master, and one of the sickest NPC summons in the entire series in the form of Egon, whose actor goes all in with those voice lines, dude. And of course, there's a phase 2, in which Bale performs a massive AoE, grows giant lightning wings, flies across the sky, shooting more projectiles, and then comes crashing down like he's Valstrax from Monster Hunter. Yeah, if they wanted to top the First Radon fight, they certainly topped it, man. Holy moly, this stuff is awesome to look at. And he even gets a scream like the dragon from the main game, Placido Sax. How do you pronounce that name? No wonder he lost one of his 3 heads to the Cursed Bale, and I look forward to getting my butt stomped by this dragon on repeat playthroughs. And finally, the last boss I want to give a special mention to is the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. As the first boss that most players will most likely come across, he is quite a spike in difficulty, who can spew dust clouds of death, leaping hits, and in phase 2, he can summon either lightning or ice to mess you up even further, since he can grab a lightning like Gwen and chuck it at you, or sumo slam ice stomps across the arena. And his attacks are so unorthodox and weird looking until you realize that's actually 2 people in the costume the whole time. And the sheer spectacle of the fight, plus the music, gives this boss a very Sekiro kind of feel to it all. So you can imagine my disappointment when I found out that there was another one out in the world that vomits death blights. Yeah, good luck with that. So those are my thoughts on the DLC of Elden Ring. While the DLC does have a few flaws due to its questionable hitboxes and whatnot, it's more of what I love from the base game of Elden Ring and then some. And I wait patiently to see what FromSoft has in store for us next. Maybe they'll do a sequel to Elden Ring, maybe they'll do a brand new game entirely, who knows honestly. Or, you know, Sony could actually give us Bloodborne 60 FPS, which they won't. A hunter can dream, can't he? Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and hope you have a blessed day. Take care.